The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. The Health Department says Metro Manila is now on a slow downtrend after logging a 13% decrease in its one-week growth rate. However, 12 regions are still at high-risk category due to COVID-19 cases. To discuss this as well as the other issues raised during today's health briefing, we now have Greg Gregorio joining us live from Antipolo. Happy Monday, Greg. Let's start with whether the entire country is also recording a downtrend, a similar downtrend in COVID-19 cases.
Charles, happy Monday. While the Department of Health has reported that there is also a decrease in the two-week growth rate for the COVID-19 cases in the whole country, there was no mention, however, of a slow downtrend in the cases for the entire Philippines. But what's clear is that we are still having a high-risk classification for the COVID-19 transmission in the whole country. In fact, our hospital utilization is also at a high risk with more than 70%. Charles?
Right, Greg, tell us about these regions that are still classified under high-risk category due to the number of COVID-19 cases.
Charles, according to Health Undersecretary Vergere, there are 12 regions which are currently under high-risk classification, and these are the National Capital Region, CAR, Region 2, Region 4A, Calabarzon, Caraga, Region 3, 11, 1, 12, 6, 9, and 5. And aside from the high-risk classification for their case transmission, these regions are also having a moderate to high-risk utilization of their hospital beds and ICU beds. Charles?
Right. Greg, given this slow downtrend, as the WHO would put it, when do they expect us to reach the peak of COVID-19 infections?
Charles, according to Undersecretary Vergere, based on the projections of FASTER in the Department of Health, we may be seeing a delayed peak, or we are expecting a delayed peak for our daily new cases. And according to their projections, the daily number of cases might peak at around late September or early October. This delayed peak might be due to the enforcement of the minimum public health standards and other interventions such as the quarantine restrictions as well as their vaccination rollout. Charles?
Right, Greg, I understand that the Delta variant cases driving surges here as well as abroad. How many Delta variant cases do we now have, and can we say that this is the dominant COVID variant in the Philippines?
Charles, based on the latest biosurveillance report of the Department of Health, we are now having more than 3,000 Delta variant cases in the Philippines, with the addition of around 319 Delta cases based on the latest batch of the whole genome sequencing back on September 18. And based on these numbers, we are now having Delta variant as the most common variant of concern among 12,000 sequenced samples in the country. This is to be followed by the Beta variant, which used to be the most common variants of concern in the Philippines. Charles?
Right, Greg, more and more vaccines are coming into the country, but I understand that there was a specific incident wherein 10,000 COVID-19 vaccines were wasted. Could you tell us more about this?
Charles, this 10,000 doses of wasted vaccines here in the Philippines was initially reported by Undersecretary Mirna Cabotaje, who is the chair of the National Vaccination Operations Center over the weekend. But according to Undersecretary Vergere, this number is the total number of wasted dosage in the Philippines, and these had a varying circumstances, such as the lack of power supply because of the recent typhoons, and some had troubles during the transportation. And Vergere clarified that this number is still well within the 5% ideal wastage by the World Health Organization, as the WHO have already pointed out that there is no perfect vaccine rollout across the globe, and this 5% is an acceptable range. Charles?
Yeah, talking about vaccination, Greg, do we have any updates on authorities allowing vaccination of children?
Charles Vergere clarified that while there are already approved emergency use authorization for the COVID-19 vaccines of Pfizer and Moderna to be used for ages 12 and above, the all experts group of the country for the use of vaccines have not issued their final recommendation for the pediatric vaccination in the Philippines. According to Vergere, foremost of the consideration is the safety of these vaccines to the pediatric population. And as of this date, the recommendation is still vaccinate the adult population in the Philippines because these are the ones that are still the most vulnerable and still the most at risk when it comes to hospitalization and death. Charles?
I understand, Greg, that the COMELEC is planning to require antigen testing as a necessary prerequisite to the filing of COCs. What's the DOH's take on this?
Charles Undersecretary Vergere emphasized that the DOH would not recommend the use of rapid antigen testing as a requirement for an individual to join any activities such as voting or COC filing for this matter, which the COMELEC will be having from October 1 to 8. According to Vergere, they would be coordinating with the COMELEC for them to give a better recommendation of what testing mechanism may be used for this purpose. Charles?
Thanks for that, Greg. That was Greg Gregorio reporting live from Antipolo. While the world is still grappling with the COVID-19 health crisis, an expert warns about various kinds of coronavirus from animals that can cause up to 400,000 more infections. This Bloomberg Quick Take will tell us more.
It could be worse out there, and that's what, keeps me awake at night. A smaller number get sick and go to clinics and get diagnosed as, oh, you've got bacterial pneumonia. Then a very small group infect other people, and you get these small chains of transmission. And once every few years, you get an outbreak that goes global. So to get to that tip of the pyramid, unfortunately, you've got to start from the bottom. You've got to go to clinics and look for evidence of outbreaks and stop those outbreaks. And if you can stop this at the level of individual infections, you've got a much higher chance of stopping the next pandemic. There are tens of millions of bats across the countryside. So that's hundreds of thousands of bats flying out every night, defecating, urinating on us, on our doorstep, on our door handles, on our food, on our clothes, and we wipe it and we rub our face and we're infected. This isn't about finding viruses and saying this country is a high risk to the rest of the world. This is about finding communities within countries that are at risk. And trying to block them from getting infected.
An OFW from Cagayan finds success from pursuing her hobby, making miniature art from clay. Let's hear her story in this report from Faith Del Mundo.
Milk tea, anyone? Or perhaps some burger? Or sinigang na hipon? And halo-halo for dessert? But would you believe these are not only made of clay, they are also only as big as a 1 peso coin. This miniature clay business is no small feat, as it keeps the family of former OFW Winnie Rose Q afloat despite the pandemic's impact to her husband's work.
Ang laking tulong po. Lalo na minsan yung time na walang-wala talaga, as in wala pong repair yung asawa ko. Sakto po nung nagpagawa sa akin, tuloy-tuloy po.
34-year-old Winnie is from Cagayan. She used to be a domestic helper in Hong Kong and Singapore until her children asked her to just stay with them at home. Winnie has made over 1,000 different designs from food to characters. But she says she has no formal training in clay art, but it's an interest she had since she was just a kid.
Na-inspired po ako sa mga kagrupo ko po na ano sila na-featured sa iba't ibang mga kaslampreneur po, parang ganun po. Sabi ko, kaya ko din naman kasi dati po natatakot ako, mabash. Mas feeling ko po hindi naman maganda yung gawa ko.
Winnie also customizes chibi or smaller and cuter versions based on a real person. These are perfect for gifts, displays, souvenirs, or even as cake toppers. Each design costs 150 to 400 pesos, depending on the size and design. Winnie says she did not expect to find success from pursuing her hobby. She has something to say to those wanting to start their own business.
Kung ano po yung gusto nila, keep going lang po. Tsaka yung lahat po na nagsisimula, hindi po maganda agad ang gawa.
For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
Here's a quick look at some of today's headlines. Vice President Leni Robredo says she's willing to go head-to-head against her rival Bongbong Marcos if the former senator decides to run for president. An infectious disease expert warns there's not enough evidence to support the efficacy of so-called COVID-19 nasal sprays. And Carlo Biado ends the 27-year drought for the Philippines with a stunning victory in the 2021 U.S. Open Pool Championship. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.